My parents beat me for asking about my wedding. Watch how I turned their world upside down. I always had this gut feeling I wasn't their favorite, but I never imagined they'd go so far as to act like I didn't even exist, especially on the biggest day of my life. My wedding wasn't anything flashy or over the top. It was a simple ceremony out in the countryside, quiet and peaceful, just how I wanted it. We were surrounded by a few distant relatives, close friends, and the man I loved with every part of me. But there was one glaring absence, my own parents. No phone call, no message, not even some half-hearted excuse. They were just gone. Quick note, please subscribe to our channel and drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from. For months afterward, I tried to make excuses for them in my head. Maybe there'd been an emergency. Maybe they had car trouble. Maybe they forgot the date. Anything that might explain away their silence. Something I could forgive. But then, the pictures surfaced. Facebook made sure I didn't miss them. There was my mom, dressed to the nines in a fancy silk gown, glowing in every photo. My dad stood next to her, grinning and raising a glass beside my sister, who, as it turned out, had thrown a random backyard barbecue the very same day I got married. Not just any barbecue, either. There were balloons, a giant Grill Master banner, the whole 9 yards. That night, I cried myself to sleep still wearing my wedding dress. Mark, my husband, held me the entire time, whispering that it was going to be okay. But my heart? It felt like it had been ripped clean out. A week later, I swallowed every ounce of my pride, got in the car, and drove to their place. I wasn't there to start a fight. I just wanted to understand. I needed to know what I'd done that made me so easy to ignore. Why was I the one they could pretend didn't matter? When I showed up, my mom opened the door like I was a stranger selling vacuum cleaners. "Oh, it's you," she muttered. No hug, no smile, no congratulations. Just a sigh and a half-hearted wave to come inside, like I was some random neighbor dropping off cookies. I asked, as gently as I could, why they didn't come to my wedding. My voice cracked in the middle, and I was barely holding it together. But my dad didn't say a word. Instead, he walked over slowly, and out of nowhere, slapped me across the face. It wasn't the sting that got me, it was the shock. My mom gasped, not because he hit me, but because I didn't crumble. I stood there, completely still, as he pointed his finger right in my face and growled, "You dare question us after marrying him? You've humiliated this family enough." I just stood there, stunned, thinking, what does enough even mean? Mark was kind, loyal, and stood by me no matter what. He treated me better than my dad ever had. Maybe that's what scared them. He couldn't control me like they used to. I turned to my mom, hoping for even a flicker of warmth or kindness in her eyes. But all I got was that same cold, smug look she always wore when she wanted to remind me of my place. "You went and got married without our blessing," she said. "You made your bed. Now lie in it." They didn't just skip my wedding, they chose to erase it. To erase me. That night, I left their house with my face burning and my heart shattered. But something inside me shifted. The girl they used to belittle, ignore, and slap into silence? She was gone. That night, I made a promise to myself. I would never again beg them for love. I would rise on my own. And when the day came that they came knocking, because I knew eventually they would, I'd remember exactly what it felt like to stand on their porch, invisible, unwanted, and completely humiliated. That day arrived a lot sooner than they ever thought it would. The weeks that followed felt like wandering through the ashes of a life I no longer recognized. I stopped checking social media. I ignored every text that buzzed on my phone. Mark gave me the space I didn't even realize I needed. I remember sitting by our little kitchen window each morning, watching the sun peek over the horizon, wondering how the kindness of strangers could feel more genuine than the love of my own blood. But somewhere in all that silence and sadness, I found something I'd forgotten. I wasn't weak. I was the one who kept going, even when they tried to break me. They tore me down more times than I could count. I survived their judgment, their constant comparisons to my so-called perfect sister, their cold stares at school events, recitals, birthdays, always conveniently forgetting me. And now, I had survived the final blow, being cut out of my own family on the most sacred day of my life. That meant one thing. I was finally free. So I got to work. During the day, I threw myself into the small home business I'd been quietly running for a while, custom event planning and decor. It wasn't flashy or famous, but it was something I had built from the ground up. At first, I stuck to local jobs, baby showers, small engagements, birthday setups. But now, I wanted more. I wanted bigger. I gave my website a complete overhaul, created a fresh brand with new colors and a new logo, and set up social media accounts that didn't carry my family's last name. I didn't want their name on anything I was about to build. The growth didn't happen overnight, but it was steady, and it was mine. I threw myself into work like there was no tomorrow, sometimes grinding through 14-hour days, organizing corporate events, high-profile parties, and private galas. Sleep became a rare luxury. I didn't have a moment to mourn the parents I realized I never truly had. Then, out of nowhere, something changed. One of the weddings I designed, a destination ceremony for a tech entrepreneur and his actress bride, went viral online. Suddenly, my follower count skyrocketed. My inbox flooded with messages. Influencers wanted to collaborate. A lifestyle magazine dubbed me the underdog turned design queen. My brand blew up overnight. Sure, the money started rolling in. But honestly, it wasn't the cash that kept me smiling late at night. It was the freedom, the peace of knowing everything I had now, every chair I picked, every chandelier I chose for a client, was made by the very same woman they once wrote off as a failure. The very same woman who got slapped like a child and told to shut up. And just as fate would have it, my rise happened right when their world started to crumble. It began with whispers from my aunt. One evening, she called, hesitant and careful, asking if I knew anything about my parents' financial troubles. I didn't. I hadn't spoken to them in nearly a year. Apparently, my dad had made a string of terrible investments. My mom had stopped working altogether. And my sister? She was too busy planning yet another destination wedding to even notice the chaos brewing back home. Then the call came from my mother herself. I barely recognized the number. Her voice was thinner now, tired, and carried an almost sweet tone. "Sweetheart," she said, "we're in a little trouble, sweetheart." I nearly laughed. She went on, explaining that the bank was threatening to take the house, that my father had collapsed from stress, and that with my sister's wedding just around the corner, they needed a bit of help to keep the family together. Just a small loan, she said, her voice trembling. We know you're doing well. We're proud of you, darling. Proud. That word tasted like ash in my mouth. I told her I'd think about it. That night, sleep didn't come, but I wasn't angry. Instead, I felt calm, and in that calm, I knew exactly what I had to do. I didn't block their number. I didn't yell or post some viral takedown online. The next day, I sent a simple, polite email. Subject, regarding your request. Body, unfortunately, my company does not extend charity to individuals who once told me I was a burden. Please direct any future inquiries to my assistant. Then I sent a package. Inside a beautifully wrapped box was a single pair of socks, the very same style they'd handed me the day they gifted my sister a BMW. But these had my company logo stitched in gold thread along the sole. A card came with it. It read, "You told me girls like me walk." So I walked away and built a kingdom. I never heard from them again. But 2 weeks later, a notification popped up. My sister's wedding planner had canceled last minute. And guess who got the call to step in? I stared at the email address in disbelief. Claire Beaumont, my sister. She had no clue her request landed straight in my inbox. The message sounded desperate but polished, probably written by an assistant. Her wedding planner was sick, and now, with only a month until her big Napa Valley destination wedding, everything was at risk. I could have said no. I could have blocked the email and kept moving. But something inside me shifted. Not anger, not revenge, but something quieter and sharper. Opportunity. I replied through my company's executive account, using a different name, hiding my identity beneath the luxury brand I'd spent years building. My assistant handled all the back and forth, and my real name never came up. Claire never asked. She probably assumed the owner was some distant, high-end designer who never dealt directly with clients. 2 weeks before the wedding, I was invited to the venue to meet the bride and go over the final details. The place was breathtaking, a vineyard estate with gold-trimmed gates, vintage wine cellars, and wide lavender fields stretching as far as the eye could see. Perfectly fitting for someone like Claire, always desperate to be envied. I showed up early, dressed down in simple black slacks and a white blouse, my hair pulled neatly back. No makeup, no fancy styling. I wasn't there to put on a show. I was there to observe. When Claire came in, my mother trailing closely behind her, I didn't flinch. At first, my mother didn't even recognize me, too caught up in Claire's sharp, bossy instructions. But then Claire paused mid-sentence, her eyes narrowing. Recognition flickered. "No way," she said slowly, her fake French manicure catching the sunlight. My mother turned and gasped like she'd just seen a ghost. "What are you doing here?" she whispered. I smiled softly. "Didn't you hear? Girls like me walk into rooms like this now." Claire's lips twisted into a sneer. "You run this place?" "I own the company," I answered. "You run this place," she repeated, disbelief coloring her tone. "You're the client. I'm the signature on the contract," I said firmly. Their faces both went pale. My mother looked like she wanted the ground to swallow her whole. I gave them an option. We proceed professionally and get the job done, or I walk away and the wedding falls apart. The choice was theirs. Of course, they chose to keep going. The next 2 weeks became a lesson in self-control. I planned every detail meticulously. Nothing was left to chance. Everything perfect, flawless. I even hired the best chefs, florists, and stylists. Not for them, but for myself. I refused to give anyone the slightest excuse to question my professionalism. No room for sabotage claims, not even at the reception. The final toast was supposed to be given by the parents. My father was absent, still recovering from the stress of losing their home, I was told. My mother stepped up instead, wearing her designer gown, eyes shining with a fake pride. "To my beautiful daughter," she said into the microphone, "the star of our family. We always knew she would be the one to shine." A few guests clapped, but it felt awkward. "And to those who support her," she continued, "especially our loved ones who've stood by us through every joy and every sacrifice." Her eyes flicked toward me. And then, just like that, the lights dimmed. A projector lit up the vineyard wall, and a video began to play. No voiceover, no dramatic music, just a simple, beautifully edited montage of my journey. Clips of me working late into the night. Photos of the event I planned. Magazine covers with my face. Short interviews where I spoke about building a company from nothing. Finally, the logo of my company appeared, the same one stitched into those socks I'd sent them. The room fell silent. And then I walked onto the stage. I wasn't invited to my own wedding. I began, my voice steady. But I was hired to build hers. And I did. With the same hands my parents once struck when I asked why they missed my big day. Gasps rippled through the crowd. I turned to face my mother. "You called me the shame of this family," I said. "But the real shame is how easily you sold your love to the daughter who cost you the most, and abandoned the one who built herself in your silence." Without waiting for any applause, I stepped down from the stage. Still, people rose to their feet, some clapping, others frozen in stunned silence. My sister broke down in tears. My mother slumped in her chair as if the air had been knocked out of her lungs. Outside, I walked toward the limo I'd arranged for myself. No rentals, just mine. Suddenly, someone called out after me. "Wait," it was Claire. "Why would you do all of this?" Her voice cracked, mascara running down her cheeks. I looked at her softly. "Because unlike you, I don't destroy people just to win. I rebuild myself." I closed the limo door with a quiet click. As we pulled away from the vineyard gates, I watched their fairy tale crumble in the rearview mirror. I didn't smile. I didn't need to. I had already won.